Hey, we are live on an impromptu People of Packaging interview. I was on a Microsoft Teams call with Paul Unrue, who will introduce himself here in a second, and we were just having a conversation. I said, "Hey, what do you want to record the interview, or do you just want to go live?" And Paul was like, "Bring it on! Let's just go live." So we're here. We're live on LinkedIn, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on Facebook. You can follow the People of Packaging podcast on Facebook. Candidly, I'm supposed to run that page. I'm terrible at it, and I don't really like Facebook. So, but you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. That would be awesome. And please, as always, follow the People of Packaging podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, which is SpecRite. If you're watching this video, you can see them up in the right up there in this corner. Uh, so if you are struggling with how to manage your own specifications, if you are wondering how you're going to handle the new EPR regulations that are coming in, or if you just want to know what it is and where it is that you can save some money on lightweighting your material, you need to go to specrite.com. Check them out, SPECRIGHT.com. Paul Unrue, thank you so much for coming on to the People of Packaging podcast and for doing this live. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 32 years, doing it live, so it's no problem. Glad you invited me.
It's so
Kind of
true.
used to it. Yeah, yeah.
It's so true. So
Everything's on the fly.
I have so you are the president at Atlapac, and I want to dig into both of those roles, kind of what you do and what your background is. But I have a very important first question. You have a basketball behind you on your shelf.
Yes.
Is that there for a reason?
Well, being 5'8", it's not because I play. It's nothing to do with that. But that's a basketball. I went to Michigan State for packaging, and that's a ball that Izzo gave me. I met
Oh,
Tom
that's
Izzo.
awesome.
So it's a ball from him and all my friends. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and our company's here, and it's Ohio State country. So I like having that on my behind me. Keeps everybody
Man,
honest.
Tom Izzo is one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And, so I'm a big basketball fan in case you don't know that. And I've always thought if you're going to default on a draft pick, I would go ahead and default to a player who's been coached by Tom Izzo. Like if you're in the second
Yeah.
round and you're like, we're trying to figure out who we're going to pick. And it's like, this guy, Aaron Henry or somebody else, like go with Aaron Henry. Like he was coached by Tom Izzo. So,
You're definitely a fan if you've heard of Aaron Henry. That's very interesting. Good
well,
call.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have random amounts of basketball knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get you.
But anyway, this is not I wish honestly, like I could probably run a basketball podcast and I would have a lot of fun, but there's plenty of those out there. I listen to 4 Denver Nuggets podcasts and the world does not need more basketball podcasts, I don't think. So so Paul, you said you went to Michigan State, you graduated in packaging. Did you always want to get into packaging?
Of course not. I mean, if you talk to any of the alumni, I know of probably myself, probably a couple thousand of them, not personally, but of them. I only know about two that got out of high school and said, I can't wait to get down to East Lansing and get into packaging.
Right.
Most of us we're in other majors. Like I was a mechanical engineering major. And growing up in Michigan, I thought it'd be an exciting thing to go work automotive. In hindsight, I did the old I think I'll take plastics. So I went into packaging from there and graduated right into printing and plastic packaging from there. And it was a good choice because it's been over 30 years of growth and fun. It's been a lot of fun being in packaging 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's only getting more and more important, and we're gonna dig into some of those reasons why. And so what has been and by the way, if you're able to watch, I know I didn't plan this, there wasn't like an event that you could subscribe to, but if you are watching this live, go ahead and drop some comments in, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. They pull through here into the platform, and I can share them if you got questions for Paul. If you know Paul, and you wanna give him some crap or whatever it is you wanna do, please go ahead and drop that in there. But if you're listening to this recording, then your comments may or may not be addressed live because we can't see into the future. So, uh, so you've mentioned this 30 years you've been in the industry. Let our listeners know a little bit about what that journey's been like. Has it all been, within one industry? Because I know right now you're in flexible packaging, or has it been you kind of bobbed and weaved throughout all of it?
It's all been pretty much in flexible packaging. I mean, right? I did my internship way back when, before the internet, as I like to joke, at a printer that did rotogravure, flexo, and offset. So it was a good 6 months of learning that as an R&D engineer. Then right out of college, I went into selling base films like polypropylene film, that kind of thing. When went into distribution selling that, like at a company that takes big rolls, makes them smaller. So I did that for a few years. Then I ended up at a flexible packaging converter, calling on brands and pet food companies, selling the whole thing, printing, laminating, bag making, that kind of thing. And then after about 15 years of that, I was having my bags made at a place called Atlapac, which is in the same town I happen to be in. I talked to the equity partners back then. It was about 14 years ago about coming aboard, and I came aboard as VP of sales. I ended up becoming one of the owners here. So we've grown the company to a higher level on all different aspects, whether it was the types of brands we're running, the quality systems that we have, the team I've built with people a lot smarter than me, the engineering team. These guys are know way beyond what a packaging grad knows. We know a lot of different things, but digging into thermodynamics and air and all the things to run a plant is not really our background. But I built a good group of people a lot smarter than me to kind of grow the company around our 100 people we have here.
That's awesome. And we'll give a quick shout out to Hugh Curtis, who is at Butternut Mountain Farms in Vermont.
Vermont.
Yeah, so Hugh's great. He participates in a whole bunch of networking events that we have. So what's going on, Hugh? Thanks for jumping. If you got any questions for Paul, please feel free to drop them in, and we will get going. This is actually this question just came in from Muhammad, and I think that this is actually a pretty pertinent question. So nice timing. He says, "How hard or easy was it to become a president with a packaging background?" I believe Muhammad is a student, or at least a recent graduate. Is it from? I can't remember if it was Michigan State or not, Muhammad, but. So how was that journey? I mean, you said you went from VP of sales, you went from packaging, um, you went from packaging engineering or packaging degree,
Mhm.
ended up in a VP of sales role. Now you're the owner of a company. So what was that? How difficult of a journey was that?
Well, it was tough. I mean, it was a long, long journey, and everybody's journey is tough. But I mean, with me personally, it was in very beginning, like right when I got out of college, I was in packaging school. Don't care which one you go to, they don't teach you how to sell. They don't teach you any of that. They may do now, but back then they didn't do it then. So
I
you had to
will I
come out and
will I
learn.
will put in a quick little interruptive plug
Yeah, yeah,
for a course that I just launched through the packaging school
yeah, yeah.
on sales operations for printing and packaging professionals. So you can actually go to sellingpackaging.com. We didn't even discuss that. But yeah, you
That
go to
is slick. Yeah,
sellingpackaging.com, and I've got an online course that I've done with the packaging school on sales. Um,
that's good because the industry needs that. We need to have a level of professionalism along with the domain knowledge because it's just so. If those first to answer the question from earlier, how did I end up becoming the president? I mean, in the beginning of my career, I spent a lot of time on the road traveling, old school with maps. Like young kids don't know what that is. I had
Not
maps.
Google Maps, everybody, not Apple
No,
Maps,
I had to go.
actual maps.
Yeah, I told a story earlier today where one of my first sales calls told this to a guy in Chicago that I was seeing in a couple of weeks. One of my first sales calls. I'm living in Columbus, Ohio. I'm 22, 23 years old, green as can be. I'm on the phone with this guy in Chicago, and he's like, well, "I think Paul, it makes sense now that we get together and visit." And I'm borderline nervous. What made me nervous to do that? I said, "All right." Back then, you did this weird thing, Adam. You asked him for their address. So he gives me his address. I write it down, whatever it was, 111 Michigan Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. I said, and back then, you asked if this, what was the second thing you asked? Can you give me directions? Because you didn't have a phone to tell you how to get there. The
Right.
guy's like, "Paul, I'm in the Stone building." I'm like, "Stone building?" Didn't have the internet to look up what the Stone. By the way, it's one of the most prominent buildings in Chicago with a big. It's not Stone building anymore, but you drive in like that's it, the one with the big triangle on the top of it.
Got it.
And so I pull up there, and it took me like 45 minutes to learn how to park. This little kid from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm figuring this all out. So you go through those things and you learn where to spend your time. And in the 80s, or excuse me, in the 90s, I spent my time learning printing, learning lamination. and getting in front of the customer. So I spent a lot of time in front of the customer, kind of helping them, adapt, get into a new package, get into the right supply chain, get into the right markets, deal with the punches of the face that comes from that, all the way. And you just learn. So I was at a small enough converter for a long time that a lot of my brands that I worked on with people would grow up and get bought. I call them my baby brands. Like I knew them when they were little. And then they end up getting bought by one of the big CPGs and that kind of thing. And plus, I was living in Cincinnati, so I had a lot of exposure to the big brands down there. So I
Right.
learned a lot there. So how did I build it up? By being the rainmaker, going out and selling and bringing in business and driving business is how you get packaging people to really grow. And as you grow, you and identify your weaknesses. Now, Mohammed asked that question. One of my biggest weaknesses when I took over as president is I'm not an accounting master. I don't know. Accounting's not my background. But I knew I had to get from a C student to at least a B student. I had to learn how to read the balance sheet really mattered, where things really matter to help us be more successful, to buy new equipment, to hire new people. So it's just a matter of understanding your weaknesses and not trying to oversell. Now, over the last 30 years, my biggest weakness has been hiring salespeople because, first of all, it's flat out difficult.
Mhm.
Second of all, I never had to look for them because we were very busy. I tend to do most of the selling myself, but as I became president, I had to get people underneath me, trust them, put them in positions where they could be successful, and mentor them and teach them. That's been the best part of the last 5 years. Is kind of
Mhm.
get young people digging packaging, getting into it, and enjoying it, and understanding that punches in the face is how we all learn. So, Muhammad, that's kind of how I did it. It took a long time of climbing that mountain, just a little step at a time.
Yeah, and Mohammed did
So,
confirm he's transferring to Michigan State for packaging next semester, so, uh,
yeah, I don't know if I
he's one
answered
of
your
the young.
question, Muhammad,
I think you did a
but
great job. Mohammed's one of the young up and coming, packaging engineers, and, I think, um, it's interesting because as you're talking about recruiting and retaining kinda younger sales people within the packaging industry, it's difficult, but I've noticed, you have, I would say, adjusted. I mean, you went from a sales job where you had to ask, like, "What's your address? Can I get directions? How do
yeah,
I get there? Let me get up my map," to now, you've got over 3,500 connections on LinkedIn. I know that you're active there. You're participating in a lot of more, like, digital social stuff. Has that been an evolution, and even has that transition been difficult for you, first? And second, does that has that helped you to connect with kind of the younger generation of up and coming packaging salespeople?
that's a really great question because over the last 8 to 10 years, we have a show. I'm sure you're familiar with it, the Pack Expo. Pack
Yep.
Expo, the show. And 8, 9 years ago, I was on LinkedIn. I found it a very simple way to build a network, to meet people and kind of sell up a little bit, get to know someone that might know something a little more beyond the basics. And 8, 10 years ago, I was barbarically posting. I still barbarically post. I'm not professional. I'm not, it really is me doing it. But I'd go to Pack Expo 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and I'd walk to the show, and it's like alumni week when I'm there. And every now and then I'd say, "Hey, Mr. LinkedIn." I'll turn around to some guy my age. I'm 54, so I was in my mid 40s then. I walk over like, what the hell are you doing on LinkedIn? I'll say, beating your ass, pardon my language.
It's
But
fine.
that's really what it came down to is just this exposure. And our business here at Atlapac is about the big guys thinking of us. They got to think, I want this done right. They got to think they're involved. They got to think that we care. And that just touches perfectly. So I've been building up my LinkedIn for years. Adam, 4 or 5 years ago, I had like a $300 million company's president pull me aside, wanted schedule a meeting at a show. I went in there. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "You got to teach me how you do this LinkedIn stuff." I go, "What part of the stuff are you talking about?" He goes, "Those posts." I go, "You have 25 people in your marketing department. They don't know how to post." It blew my mind. I said, "It's just a matter of being sincere, value." I know everything I post isn't a value. Sometimes I get more views on my jokes at times, but
Yeah.
thinking about you. That's what resonates. That's what makes the difference in our business.
Yeah, I've been told we should connect up one of these days and just have like a non-online conversation because it was around the same time. It was about 8 years ago for me, and so at the time I'm 41, so at the time I was pretty new into sales. I'm a pastor. That's my background, and my background in packaging was actually in procurement. And I was like, I saw this stat in, I think it was Packaging Digest or something, that said, where are companies spending most of their marketing dollars? And it was trade shows and magazine ads and things like that. And then just right below it, it said, where are decision makers spending most of their time? Number one was LinkedIn. And I was like, am I the only one here that's noticing that?
Yeah, yeah.
So I just, same thing. I hired a LinkedIn coach. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I got the same kind of advice, right? Like, show up, be authentic. It's not a sales platform. It's a networking platform. So just bring yourself to the platform and show up consistently. And, likewise to you, I've had, I mean, similar stories from presidents and CEOs of billion-dollar companies today saying, "Our we don't know how to use this platform." And I'm sure now, as a president of a company, you probably also get the bad stuff from it, like the bad outreach, the connection request
Yeah,
immediately followed
yeah.
by 15 paragraphs and a PDF in your inbox about how great the company is. You're like, This isn't what we're supposed to be doing
That's
here, dude."
totally ineffective. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves. I mean, if I do look who wants to connect, because for the most part I'm open about anyone, but every now and then I'll connect to some. I'll look who we have in common, and these are simple things to you and I. We're familiar with this, but I'll look who we have in common. I'll say connect. If a message automatically comes into my little inbox, I delete them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't.
It's
I don't. That's not what I'm there for. I'm
no,
there to
not at all.
network, peer. And the other thing I don't that I've seen recently that I'm not a big fan of is the lack of sincerity. It's pretty obvious that some of these companies have commissioned all their salespeople that you have to post once a week.
Yep.
And they're posting garbage.
Yep. Or they're just
It just
reposting their
infuriates me.
companies. They're just taking their company's talking points and reposting it. It's like,
It's just not what I'm looking for. And
no.
they know what it does that and makes us all look for what's next. Now, what am I getting picked on about? TikTok, because I'm 54. But no
Are we
kids are.
connected on TikTok?
No, we're not. By the way, no one connect me on TikTok. That's for fun still. But no, I get crap from the people in my industry. It's like, why are you on TikTok? I'm like, you're just a billion years old. And that's like my joke to other guys in this business, and older people. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you want to stay ahead of the curve, you got to at least take a good look at it. Now, every now and then, I'm sure you see it too. There's new formats that come out, new platforms, and that.
Yep.
But TikTok, TikTok's the way to get you to look at the things they want you to look at. It's pretty unprecedented in my
Yeah.
experience.
It hit me, about 8 months ago, actually, on TikTok, so I feel pretty new into that whole world. When I told my son, who is 14, I was like, I gave him my phone because he doesn't he's got a Gab wireless phone, which, shout out to Gab Wireless, we love it. It's like a smart dumb phone, and it's incredible. So, I was like, "Hey, watch this." I don't even remember what it was. It was like color changing paint on a BMW or CES or something like that. And I was like, "Yeah, like, watch this video." And he opens up TikTok, and I was like, "Why did you go to TikTok?" He's like, "'Cause that's where I would search for it." And I'm
Right.
like, "Oh, this is about way more than dancing and it being
Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculous." And so I got on it to force myself to create micro content, because making long form, oh man, Corey Connor's coming in. TikTok is,
Oh,
Corey's been
I
my
know who he
TikTok
is.
Jedi. He's been my Jedi master on TikTok. Everyone follow at Coreygated,
I do.
CORYGATED.
Yeah.
He's great. But it forced me to make micro content, right? So how do I take a complex idea into a 20-second soundbite is really hard, especially for a Southern Baptist minister who's used to giving 45-minute sermons. And so I just did it as a way to force myself to make different kinds of content. And I joked with my son that I'd get 100 followers, and he laughed. Well, now I'm at, as of today, it's like 13,200 followers on TikTok. So, it's an emerging platform. It's a great platform. I totally relate to what you were saying on being called. Like, I got told, "Why don't you just go work for LinkedIn? Why are you spending all your time on LinkedIn? Why are you now on TikTok? Why are you making these videos on TikTok?" And I was like,
Uh,
"Because that's where people find me." I don't know.
right.
What
Right.
are you
Right.
doing to be found? It's like, do you
Yeah.
wanna keep just, like, cranking out cold calls? all day long, or do you want people to call anyway? It's thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. Adam's doing awesome things on TikTok. Thanks, Corey.
I'm not, so don't go to mine.
um, hey, Mohammed,
Mine's for fun.
we'll get to your question here in a second, but I did want to touch on a topic talking about kind of marketing and branding. You know, we're talking about personal branding into our industry, and let's kind of come back to what you do at Atlapac, which is flexible packaging. So earlier this week, I was on the Packaging News Weekly show that myself, Corey, and Avelio Matos host, and and I went on a bit of a rant about this like anti-plastic disdain and hatred. And I work for a company, Myers, and we make paper-based packaging. So when I say I went on a rant about it, I didn't go on the rant because I wanted people to buy stuff from me. I went on it because I study data and information, and I really value what is true, not just what's a narrative. And and so while we're talking pre-call, you were like, "Yeah, we need to do a better job in the industry of really driving home the point around the sustainability component of flexible packaging." You've been in this industry now for a lot longer than I ever spent in it. So, what is it about that we're missing about the sustainability conversation as it pertains to flexible packaging?
Well, fundamentally, I think what we're missing is kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's like we don't really baseline what's really great about it. We don't talk about, you know, if you look at packaging globally, I always tell people like the most innovative stuff in packaging, rigid or flexible, tends to come from Japan. That's 10 years. I consider Japan 10 years ahead of us. They don't have less packaging, they have more than we do per unit of food, much more packaging. And you can go 5 years ahead of us and go over into Europe, parts of Europe. A lot of just because of the how large Europe is, how each country has its own infrastructure, its own factories. I tell people all the time, Germany has 12 Haribo plants to make gummy bears. And I know if we have one, look at the square mile. My point is all the manufacturing is centralized. And when it comes to sustainability, the Japanese, the Europeans, food preservation. That's what they push. All the trade shows that matter to me, like Interpack in Dusseldorf, is all about preserving food and flexible packaging. For the thickness and the innovation you get out of it and the type of energy it takes to make it, it's one of the best things you can do to preserve food. Uh, Adam, you guys probably deal with this. You know, I'm the guy at the grocery store, whether it's Costco or a local grocer like Kroger or something, or the old ladies complaining at me because I say I love plastic bags. When they say paper or plastic, I say I love plastic bags. Then somebody else say, "Hey, that's not right." I'm like, "You don't know the energy to take." Not criticizing paper. It takes more energy to make paper. I get that if you're going to go home and use it properly, I get it. But usually it's somebody with one of those woven bags from like China, which
Yep.
I heard in a conference a couple of years ago. You got to use that 241 times to break even in one plastic bag.
Well, the number may be higher. There's a whole New York Times story about it. Not
Yeah,
to mention not to mention that cotton is coming from the Uyghur region, which currently has over 2 million people
right,
enslaved or murdered in mass genocide. But aside from that, yeah, stay.
right. So that obviously my numbers way. The point is, I'm in packaging all these years of experience, and I always forget the bags.
Yeah,
Well, let's be realistic. You're more than likely going to use a bag at the store, that kind of thing. And I just think we need to do a better job of telling the story that flexible packaging preserves the food that you like to eat. I remember you guys probably have noticed this with bananas. They're putting the plastic on the end of the bunch now.
mhm.
They put a little bit of stretch wrap on that. I had a lady in Whole Foods find out that I'm in packaging. She's like, "You got to get rid of this plastic off these bananas." Why is that story not being told that that helps preserve the bananas? That it does an incredible thing to get 2 days more out of a bunch of bananas that go all over the world from Costa Rica, wherever they're grown. And it makes a world of difference in the supply chain and the energy consumption, all this stuff. But no one knows that story. The only story they know is that they got to throw away this little piece of plastic.
Right, right. And
We
by the
don't
way,
do a good job.
I say this, as well to folks, like, I'm not in the pro plastic lobby, um, but when it comes to food waste and helping food. I mean, if I think there's like not PLA, or like if there's other innovations out there that prolong the life of food better than that little tiny shrink wrap, great, let's go for it, right? Like
Right, right.
we're all on board. It's just that they're not there, and then you potentially legislating away, like we talked about before the call, like getting rid of all single use plastic and packaging is going to be a complete nightmare for the food and beverage industry, a total nightmare for the food and beverage industry.
Yeah,
Not to mention if it ever touched med device and pharma, what would we do? Like, do you want to
yeah,
reuse needles to give COVID injection? Like, not injection, COVID vaccinations? Like, I don't
yeah.
want to. What are we talking about here?
It'll be interesting to see what results from that. I mean, we all know about when they banned the plastic shopping bags on the West Coast. Trash bag sales went through the roof. People
Yep.
need plastic bags. I'm not saying that, like I joked earlier, and I don't mean this in a lighthearted way, but I don't like seeing animals or trash in the ocean. I'm not a fan of any of that. That's not something I'm interested in. But let's be real. Let's talk about what the advantages are. We don't spend enough time on that. We
Yeah,
just don't. We just talk about the seals and the animals in the ocean. And I don't like oceans of plastic, but that's not typically not in the states. It's in third world countries where they're throwing plastic. It's still not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a
yeah,
good thing, but
yeah,
it's
and
just not
there
the reality of what
there's an
we're dealing
argument to
with.
be made that I've heard from some friends here on LinkedIn that, a lot of that trash is actually exported from the US. It ends up in some of these countries that are developing, whatever it is, right? Like, I agree. I don't want excess trash, in the ocean, like, nobody really wants that. The LLDPE bags in the store, if you're responsible with it, like, we collect all of ours, we drop them off, it all gets turned into composite decking at Trex, which is incredible because
Mm-hmm.
now we are using fewer VOCs to finish our decks. They last a lot longer, and by the way, we don't have to cut down trees anymore, in order to make
Mm-hmm.
decking. So it's like there is a whole story that I think that's not greenwashing. That's a legitimate story. That's actually what happens with these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And I'll tell people in the store, and I feel like it's one of those progressive insurance commercials because they're like, my kids are embarrassed. I'm like, I'll tell the store clerk, like, do you know what happens to this bag when it gets recycled? And they're like, no. I'm like, it gets turned into that composite decking, like Trex decking. It's a really good thing. And you should tell people that to bring their bags back and to recycle them. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree. And so I'll finish it up here. I've got one more question. I want you to maybe either connect with Mohammed or you can speak to his question here in a second. I'll pull it up on the screen. But at Atlapac, what is it? You've got 100 employees. So are you proactively going out into the CPG world and sharing these stories? How are you getting that message out besides obviously the People of Packaging podcast?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because a lot we have two divisions of our business. We have what I call the retail side of our business, and then the toll side. The toll side is where if we go to the grocery store or go to Costco and I point at bags that we made, like a pouch where we put the zipper in, it's with the huge CPGs. It's one of the five, the Mondeleses, all those types of people, all their brands under their umbrella. Versus a retail account might be a local coffee guy doing a coffee bag, something like that. So it's a different, totally different mindset of who we tell the story to. The big guys that are handling the huge brands, whether it's Frito Lay or one of their brands, they know the sustainability story. They're worried about the supply chain, how much they can get, but we're their incubator. They come to us to make the pouches that Thrive stores in the West Coast will put in the store because we know how to run sustainable films, we know how to make them leak proof. We know, I use a bad word, leak resistant, not proof. Uh, so they'll come to us to kind of incubate the brand with new technology, new structures, because they're too busy running all day long on something else.
Yeah.
Well, bringing the sustainable options to us, co-pack it, get it out in the store, do shelf life studies, do all that kind of thing. So we help with that story. But to sit in front of the brand and say we know more about sustainability of a $1 billion converter, we don't necessarily, but we know where the successes are. We know we can
Yeah.
take an e-beam film, run it very, very well, and put it in a single structure that's recycle ready and it actually has value versus greenwashing. And we
Mhm.
run into a lot of greenwashing in what we do because God forbid, we like to say you're a pastor, but we like to say the truth. What we make
Yeah.
is the truth. We were in cannabis 6, 7 years ago. My packaging team and I are trying to develop material that doesn't rip open, with a closure a kid can't get into, and legitimately get certified. Colorado's getting all big and mighty in it and all that kind of thing. And we're out of pure ethics, we failed. We failed. Kids are chewing off the corners. We re-engineer it. We finally get some. Meanwhile, imports are coming in and cheap materials. Now the price point's way down low, so the value of child resistance
Mm,
diminished.
yeah.
And now I'm dealing with the same thing we kind of deal with the greenwashing. If the bag says it's compostable on the outside, people say it is,
Right.
even
Oh,
though it isn't. I don't know how to overcome that. I have friends that have brands that are buying imported bags that have home compostable written on the side of it, and it isn't. So what
no,
am I going
trust
to
me.
do?
I
Police
have
it?
a home. I have a compostable. Like I can do industrial composting at small scale in my house, and I have taken packaging that says compostable film and put it in there. That sucker's not. It's got to go. That's got to go to a more robust composter than even what I have. So
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, Paul, we've only got a couple more minutes here. It might be good to connect up with Mohammed here. He's asking, he's going to get his bachelor's in packaging, and he's just curious about does he, do you stay in, get a master's in packaging, go get an MBA, or just kind of go to work. So, um, maybe connect up with Mohammed on LinkedIn, or Mohammed connect up with Paul on LinkedIn, and then my friend Dustin up in Minneapolis. Yeah, pyrolysis to reuse original PET bottles. I think that's definitely an interesting topic, that the chemical recycling of flexible films and mixed, HDPE, PET, polypropylene, mixing those all together and creating a valuable product on the end of that life is certainly something that's got a lot of legs. So I appreciate everybody jumping in. Mohammed, Dustin, Corey, Hugh. I think I got everyone for jumping in. Thanks for jumping in. And Paul, to you, I'm super grateful and appreciative of our connection, of your time. How do people get more of you, and how do they get connected to Atlapac?
Well, our website's atlapac.com. Now it's Atlantic Pacific Ocean, abbreviated.
So AT.
ATLAPAC.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry. Go ahead.
ATLAPAC.com. That's our website, and you can reach me through that and see my whole team on there and see what we're all about.
Yeah, and you've got a great LinkedIn banner. I love your what you're doing on LinkedIn, and just in general, keep pushing forward on the industry. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate you for jumping in here and being part of this live podcast interview. So, if everybody please can connect up with me, you can find me on TikTok at Packaging Pastor. I'd love to connect up on LinkedIn. Just find me at Adam Peak. And you can also learn a little bit more about the selling courses that I have through the packaging school at sellingpackaging.com. I think that's all I got. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. I got to find this button here up there. Paul, any last words?
No, thanks, everybody. Thanks for stopping by, and connect with me if you have any questions or you just want to connect. No
100%.
problem.
All right.